This is Daytona Tamworth, and last time I was here, I was absolutely screaming my head off in fear while driving a D-Max kart. So today, I figured we'd come to the track and try something a little less threatening to my existence. So, I'm here today with my friends, taking part in an open sprint race in the N35 karts this time. However, there are going to be a lot of people on track of varying skill levels, which of course means the shenanigans are sure to follow. Welcome to Perico Karting, and in this episode I absolutely crash out trying to overtake every backmarker spawned by God himself. Joining me today is Mango, Connor, Helgast, someone called James Gain, and of course, this little demon, who was entrusted into our care for the day so that he could take part in this race. Which means that victory is probably unlikely, let's be honest, but hey, part of the fun is trying to find out if it is, so we've got qualifying to do first. So let's hit the track and see where we can place on the grid. And qualifying officially begins, with Jake's enthusiasm clearly matching his pace as he tries to dart around the outside of the pack. However, that enthusiasm is clearly not shared by the people around him, who decided to wait a business week before applying the throttle. However, me, Kart 31, and the kart in front of the pair of us clearly got the memo and decided to just shoot away into the distance. Now, Kart 27 very clearly knows his lines here as he takes a nice, wide exit coming out of that corner, but he is still notably off the pace, which means he's a lot slower than I'm giving him credit for, or that kart he's driving actually has a breadstick for an engine. Kart 31 manages to find the inside, and as I try to follow him through in this corner here, I have no entry speed, no exit speed, and almost got squeezed into the barrier because I was not aware of my spacing. I missed the apex massively on that corner there because I clearly do not jive with this track. However, I do manage to throw it to the inside of this corner here. Meanwhile, up ahead, Kart 31 decides to vigorously introduce himself to Kart 22, who in turn almost forces me wide and introduces me to that lovely patch of grass on the left there. These karts do not make good lawnmowers, as I almost found out, and James Gain managed to find his way past us. However, I'm going to do everything I can to catch up to James Gain and get back past him again, because, well, if there's one lesson I absolutely refuse to learn, it's the lesson of don't battle in the middle of qualifying. He gets his corner exit screwed over by a back marker, and I use all of the runoff to effectively get straight past James Gain again. So now I'm going to try and catch up to this guy in the green suit up ahead of me to see if I can copy his lines, because, well, he clearly knows what he's doing. Just a bit later into this lap, I try and send a Hail Mary dive on the inside of this guy right here after he absolutely misses his braking point and effectively oversteers his way into the corner. However, because he was on my outside there, it effectively impedes my exit. It means that I get such a slow exit that this guy just rips ahead into the distance, and I'm genuinely debating in my own head as I'm watching this back right now, just how much further can this guy get before I'm able to efficiently blame this on kart diff. Because, wow, I had a bad exit, but that is ridiculous, man. He just absolutely shot off. Not that it's really going to matter though, because just 2 laps into qualifying, we already have a full course yellow. Now, most outdoor tracks run sector by sector yellow flags, and this track is no exception. So, a massive incident must have occurred in order for it to be a full course yellow 2 laps into qualifying, and I think that's effectively going to set the tone for what kind of race we're doing here. Yay! The full course yellow eventually ends, and this guy in front of me effectively just waves me through for whatever reason. Not wholly sure why, but I'm not exactly going to argue with it. There are a lot of back markers out here on track, but for the time being, a lot of them are just staying off the racing line. But I do see someone up ahead who is clearly not wearing the Daytona Tamworth garb. I believe that actually might be Connor, so if I can catch up to him and we can work together to get through these back markers, maybe we can help each other set a nice fast lap and get ourselves nice and high up on that grid to get us ever closer to that fabled podium. However, pay attention to this guy's corner. He goes incredibly wide on his entry, and then that means he is effectively impeding me on the exit. Now, what I want you to do is remember how he's taken that corner, because that entire interaction with this one person effectively sets the tone for pretty much exactly what I'm about to experience throughout this entire race. You can see that he's kind of pulling away from me here. I'm not sure if his lines are better or if this car really is made of cheese. My line through this corner was admittedly suffering, but I was making full use of the runoff area coming through there. He is still just walking away from me here though, so he's clearly got some knowledge of this track. However, again, he goes deep coming through this corner. I'm trying to catch up to the back of Connor. I go nice and wide on the exit through there. Try and go for the inside, and we've had to slow down because someone has effectively decided to go off-roading on this tarmac track. Kind of a suboptimal racing line, mate, but thank you for bringing out yet another yellow flag in the middle of qualifying. And just 30 seconds later, this lap got ruined before it even began because yet again, there is another yellow flag. We've only had about 6 laps of qualifying and 4 of them have had a yellow flag, so you can expect the race to go just as well, really. However, pay attention to this marshal post on my right here, which very clearly displays green, so what I end up doing is splitting the lanes between these two here, only to see another yellow flag at the next marshal post, expecting to be black flagged for overtaking on yellows. However, that did not happen. James Gain is also just powering his way through, so he must have seen the same thing, but we're now just coasting behind Connor, waiting for permission to race again, which we eventually get once this marshal post goes green, and I stick it down the inside of Connor right here. Alright mate, calm down, I think you got the message. Jesus. We didn't even make it one more corner before we had yet another yellow flag. How people continuously manage to absolutely drop it on a track that is, for go-karts, about as wide as Gorlock the Destroyer is completely beyond me. But it does effectively mean that once again, another qualifying lap has been ruined, and for whatever reason, I think they've called the full course yellow on this one again. So, let me just try and skip through any of this footage to see if I manage to get a single flying lap in. No, I didn't. That was your lot. My one single good lap was me effectively having to scythe my way through a bunch of back markers and having my exit compromised by someone who was clearly faster than me. I have not qualified in P2, unfortunately, as this would imply. I am just being placed here as we try and get onto the grid. So, I'm gonna just quickly cut ahead to see exactly where I've qualified because, well, I lost the results sheet and I have no idea. P8! Wow, well, I've had worse qualifyings, that's for sure, and definitely worse grid starts, so I'm going to see what I can make of this and see if I can actually try and claw any positions back. You'll notice, with absolutely no surprise, that up ahead on pole is George, which effectively means that the win has been locked away, but if I can get past Helgast and these other clearly more experienced drivers up ahead of us, maybe a podium's on the cards? There's only one way to find out, and that's to start the race. And the lights go green, and let's go racing. Now, I have had worse race starts than this. This one has been aided slightly by the guy in P7, almost getting spun out by someone looking for a rather ambitious move coming out the first corner. Now, as we barrel down the back winding straight here, I almost get a run on Helgas, but the racing line does indeed dictate that he dart over to the right-hand side to clip the curb, but the pace is looking strong as we're coming through this corner here, which means that maybe it isn't completely hopeless. I utilize all of the runoff on the left-hand side, which basically means that I get a nice and quick exit coming out of that corner, finally pulling alongside with Helgas right here, hoping that maybe a move around the outside can be made. However, he oversteers onto the curb, which effectively means I have to respond, and on a banked section of the corner, being slowed down even slightly in a 4-stroke rental kart like this is going to absolutely dampen my speed colossally, which is a big problem because as we're coming through these corners here, well, I'm still sticking with him, the pace is still looking good. I actually decide to hit that apex for once, which is a nice change, but coming into this corner here, this is where I fall apart because I'm trying to take a nice and tight line coming through this corner here, clipping this barrier, and because it's on such an angle, it means the kart has to really struggle coming over that hill, and that tiny mistake has opened up a massive gap up to the back of Helgast. So now I need to focus, lock in, and try and race as hard as I can just to even get close to him again. Every tiny little mistake on the banked sections of the corners is going to absolutely cripple me. And this is going to be a big problem when the back markers finally come into play. What definitely did not aid matters was this individual on my inside here, who you'll notice is the same kart I was battling and qualifying with, effectively getting a better run down the back winding straight and effectively just shooting his way through. And because I got forced wide by his move, it means that kart 15 has also found a move on the inside as well. So now I'm down 2 more positions, which is really not optimal, putting me down in a measly P9. But this guy in kart 15 goes a little bit wide. However, I absolutely mess up my corner exit there, opening up yet another gap. But it's on the banked areas of the circuit where I can really use my weight advantage. Not that it's going to matter much, because just 2 laps into the race, we're finally encountering our first backmarker traffic. And if you thought that that little pass there was perfectly fine, just wait until they start ending up on every single corner exit that you can even dream of in your tiny little cute little brain. Which probably isn't tiny. You're probably very, very smart. I'm sorry I said tiny, that just flew off the tongue. Our first taste of backmarker chaos comes with this individual here, who everyone manages to find their way around, but his rather awkward lines means that I have to stay cautious of him, and frankly, this absolutely scuppers both mine and 15 speed through that corner, which is good for me because it means that 15 has not decided to effectively run away with this race, but bad for me because it means that that's going to be a constant problem, and with my luck with these guys, that problem is going to be exacerbated by a million. We come towards the last corner here, and I'm going to see if I can learn from my mistakes and maybe not get slowed down by the banking. Nope, I look for the inside, immediately slowing myself down, and watch in horror as both the carts ahead of me effectively just evaporate into the distance, while I struggle with my little breadstick mobile that I'm sat behind right now to just stay within the same corner as them, because yes, mistakes on this track really are that punishing. Kart 15 looks for a move on the inside of Hellgas right here, which I'm really hoping will slow the both of them down because Hellgas starts looking towards the outside to try and regain that position. Now we're on the downward sloping parts of the track again, which means I can really use my pace advantage right here because, again, I weigh the same as a feather. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to use that to catch up to the back of Hellgas and finally get past him. However, nothing ever goes to plan. Nothing ever goes to plan. My God. You are not ready for this. Coming down the main straight, I've stuck to the back of Hellgas this time. However, he rather intelligently darts his way around the outside of this back marker before they can just absolutely force him off the track. I, however, am not so lucky, them making contact with me, which effectively knocks me straight off of my line and slowing me down a little bit. And then just a corner later, there is a 3-kart incident unfolding, which this guy in the blue helmet was unfortunate to be a part of, costing him several positions, and one of the survivors of that wreck was slowing me down through this corner here. Yes, we are 5 laps into this race, and already we've got a 3-kart pile-up, including one of the front runners. So that's my obstacle for this race, while fighting some genuinely quick drivers. So let's see if I can win the war on 2 fronts, shall we? Nope, let's add another one to the impeding counter right here, because while these guys very quickly find their way through the inside of this back marker, my exit speed gets absolutely scuppered by his presence, and I effectively just get slowed down once again, watching a train of carts disappear directly into the distance. This is becoming really demoralizing, and I guess I can't really blame the back markers for all of this. They have every right to be on this track, but for God's sake, it was just the timing of it. I don't blame them, I blame the universe's sick sense of humor for putting them where they were at the time they were there. I've been losing them the most coming down the back winding straight of the track because whatever mistake I'm making in the final corner is absolutely ruining this kart and, frankly, my self-esteem. However, this little trio I'm chasing is about to hit a couple of back markers up ahead, and I'm hoping that maybe they'll slow them down, because this guy in the middle of all these guys effectively suffers the Kevin Magnussen at the Dutch GP treatment as everyone darts around him. However, as we approach this corner, just 8 laps into this race, we have the first red flag. Because even though this track is indeed wider than Portugal, somehow these barriers look really attractive to these people. This guy decides to try and get a cheeky little position on me, even though he's several laps down at this point, so I just rather bluntly retake my position, and we just kind of sit here comfy, waiting for the restart. Now, you might be wondering, where on earth is George? Either he's absolutely disappeared into the distance, or something's gone wrong. Well, for once, it's the latter. Let's have a look. At some stage during this desperate battle to cling onto this little trio here, I get told to slow down because, as you'll notice, there's someone very deep in the first corner who has come to a complete stop. Would you believe me if I told you that's George, and would you believe me even further if I told you it's not even a mechanical issue? You might have also noticed just how high my hands are on the steering wheel. Now, normally I keep my hands here on square steering wheels rather than these circular ones. I like to keep my hands at 4 and 8 on the circular ones. However, these N35 karts are incredibly cramped. And even though George is effectively half of my height, he suffered the exact same problem I was suffering, in that his leg effectively just ruptured from the inside, and he came to a complete stop, unable to continue the race. He got a cramp. He got a cramp. I don't know why I made that sound so dramatic. He got a leg cramp, and a bad one. So, the leader's out of contention. Everyone seems quite bunched up here, so let's see what we can do. See if maybe a recovery to the top is not entirely off the cards. However, as the track finally comes off a full course yellow, the guy in kart 19 closes the gap a lot quicker than I was expecting him to, which effectively means that because he's got more power coming out of that corner, I'm being held up once again. I'm doing my best to get past him here, however that little slide means that I've been slowed down by him once again. Now, what on earth is he doing to that steering wheel? He is absolutely fishing for grip like he's trying to catch a killer whale, and that kind of grip strategy clearly isn't helping him through that corner, as he absolutely sails into the barriers somehow, and effectively brings out another yellow flag in that part of the track. So, I've figured out how these incidents keep happening. It's because half of these people are trying to steer their cart in the same way one would try and crank start a Ford Model T. Repeating the tale as old as time, these three find a perfect line down the inside of this individual here, who is just perfectly planted on my corner exit, which effectively means I have to go wide in the next corner to give him some room. However, they are still relatively within reach for now, but that is not going to last for some reason, because every single time I come out of this corner, I'm killing so much of my speed off that they're effectively just disappearing again. Now, I can already see exactly what's going to happen with this person in front of me. I'm going to catch them right at the end of the straight, and then they're effectively going to brake on their corner entry right on the inside, slowing me down yet again. This is getting absolutely maddening, and it is far from over. At this point in the race, I am so far out of contention, I may as well not even be racing, and yet again, there is another yellow flag which Jake apparently just missed and darted straight down the outside of me. However, he does concede that position, and as we enter the next sector of the track, we are now back on green flag racing conditions, where I am about to catch up to the back of another person, as well as a person in front of him who decided the best way to get round the apex of that corner was to go directly over it for some reason. Jake decides to go round the outside of me there, but gets held up by this person here who has a massive snap of oversteer, effectively just getting directly in my way, slowing me down, parting the seas for Jake, slowing me down in this corner as well, almost crashing into me there, which would have put me into the barrier if he had, and losing me another position. You'll forgive me if you can hear shouting in the background of this footage. It's because this has been going on all qualifying and all race, and I'm a man of little patience to begin with, and this almost broke me. It's not their fault, it's just really, really, really bad luck, as well as a complete lack of race pace from yours truly. You're effectively watching a bitch fit, basically, but it was a bitch fit I paid money for, and it keeps going wrong. Did you think things were going to go smoothly from here? You are very mistaken, because for whatever reason, these three decide to have a little car park right there, all spinning out on the same corner, bringing out the yellow flag, which fortunately means I don't lose too much time as a result. But now it means that I've gained a little bit of ground on Jake, who has slowed down a lot because of those flags, but it went green at an opportune time for me. Trying to go down the inside of this person here, that clearly worked, so now I'm trying to tail Jake. He's giving me signals saying work together, not like that's going to do me any good when he is effectively rocketing away into the distance, and I'm just struggling to keep up with him in this absolute tractor of a kart. But let's see if we can actually utilize some teamwork and effectively just try and recover anything out of this race. Not that it's going to matter really, because just a handful of corners later, someone has decided to have an incident so severe that it's brought out the red flag, which means that we all come to a controlled stop on this part of the track. I try and talk to Mango over these roaring engines, which I'm not even going to bother raising the volume for because we can't hear each other. And believe it or not, this is where the race actually ended. Yes, this red flag took so bloody long, they effectively just ended the race as soon as the track conditions were lifted back to green. So, that's how my race ended. from a humble P8 start on a track I am not comfortable with, to whatever the hell position this is. Honestly, I stopped keeping track as soon as I started encountering the traffic. Honestly, I have no one but myself to blame for all this, really. I was miles off my usual pace on a track I'm just really not comfortable with, and even though my timing with those back markers was woefully unlucky, I probably could have handled it better in some areas. Of course, there were areas where I just had absolutely no choice but to slow down, such as being brake checked at the end of the winding straight, or effectively just being a spectator to whatever the hell this was. But this was such an incident-laden race that they effectively just called it off in the latter half of it, which is fantastic. The closest any of us got to the podium was actually Hellgas this time, who stayed in his P6 standing spot, putting up a fantastic race, a brilliant fight, and showing just what pace he's actually capable of. Mango just got ahead of me in the latter stages of the race, but I managed to stay ahead of at least Connor, so maybe I can take that home as a point of pride. No, not really, because he probably suffered the exact same incidents as me, and, well, qualifying was an absolute dumpster fire. All in all, a very disappointing race here at Daytona Tamworth, but it's a video, and I finally got it out. However, the next race is going to be a 6-hour team endurance race I competed in with my friends at Three Sisters Circuit. Now, I'm going to be very upfront with you guys. I am burnt out like crazy. It is taking me a lot of mental effort to even begin making a video at the moment because, well, I'll be honest, me failing that driving test back in January did such a number on my brain, in combination with my breakup, that I have effectively been masking the fact that I've been kind of struggling lately. So what I'm going to do with this next video is a bit of self-care. I'm going to take my time with it. It's going to be done when it's done, and I'm going to put a lot of effort into it because the race really warrants it. Thank you to the regular audience who keep showing up for the videos, even if the view count has dwindled massively from what it was last year. Not that I'm going to focus too heavily on that, because that's a pipeline straight into making videos about how my channel is dying, and I've never been a big fan of those. It is demoralizing, to put it bluntly, to just see a big mass of downward grey arrows every time I open YouTube Studio, but the absolute mass of fantastic comments and supportive comments I get both in Discord and in YouTube make it all worthwhile. So don't you worry, there will be content coming. I just need to look after myself, and I really want to put effort into this next one. So, until next time.